Hello and welcome to this episode of Naturally Scott. I'm your host, Scott Harris. Honored to be your host, by the way, and maybe even a little touch more so today because of my guest, Elizabeth Gray. Elizabeth is the CEO of the National Audubon Society. She and I have become friends through this. She's a guest in Why We Love Birds. We've had a chance to talk a couple of times, and I find her to be an absolute delight, and I believe you will too. She's going to tell us some stories about when she was a young lady and was not really a birder. She's going to tell us about moving to Hawaii and falling in love with Hawaiian honeycreepers and the man she is still married to today. So that's kind of a neat deal. Not everybody gets that out of birding. We're going to talk a bit about bald eagles on the Potomac River and at Skagit River in Skagit Valley, Washington, which will be neat. But mostly we're going to talk about the National Audubon Society, their mission, their vision, their successes, a couple of things they're struggling with, and what Elizabeth calls, and I love this, bending the bird curve. We've lost over 3 billion birds in my lifetime in the Americas, down to the tip of Argentina and up into the Arctic. And Elizabeth is doing what she can through the organization to stem that loss and even rebuild some of those losses. So she's going to talk to you about the programs they're doing, the local chapters, a variety of things. You're going to find her pleasant and charming and fascinating, and I cannot wait for you to enjoy this episode. Have a spectacular day. Sit back and listen, or watch if you're watching on YouTube. Enjoy. Bye. Hello and welcome to this edition of Naturally Scott. I'm your host, Scott Harris, and our guest today is Elizabeth Gray. Elizabeth, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Scott.
So,
it's such a pleasure. Such a pleasure to join you today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, I think it's going to be a blast. Elizabeth has one of the more challenging schedules of anybody I've ever known in my professional and personal life. So we feel honored that she is here. Elizabeth is a guest in the book, Why We Love Birds. And so I am thrilled that she's a part of that book as well, and now a part of this podcast. But when she is not doing me personal favors, she is the CEO of the National Audubon Society, which apparently is kind of a hectic, busy job. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about some of Elizabeth's personal stuff, and we're going to talk about the Audubon Society. But before we do that, because she has shared with me previously she enjoyed it, I want to give a shout out to the former global managing director of the Nature Conservancy, which is a gig that you enjoyed and were even hesitant to leave. So tell us quickly about that, and then we're going to back up to Hawaii and some of the other parts of your life, and then we're going to roll forward with the Audubon.
I love it. Well, the role you were just talking about was the role I had immediately prior to coming to the National Audubon Society. And I loved it. And we'll get into this when we talk about Hawaii. But I've been a conservationist for about 30 years, passionate, of course, about birds that whole time. And being able to focus every single day on looking at the impacts of climate, both how we take down greenhouse gas emissions, but also how we adapt to the impacts of climate all around the world, which is what I was doing at the time, was profoundly impactful for me. It just felt like I was really making a difference in the world. And that's really what drives me every single day, is trying to make this world a better place.
Well, and you seem to be moving in that direction. But let's go back. You said you've been a birder that whole time, but there was a time when you weren't really a birder.
That's right.
In your childhood. And I cannot have this conversation without asking you to tell us about a series of 3 books called Tell Me Why, which had, it's fair to say, a profound impact on your life.
They did. And I have one next to me because I needed to hold it up and show people. But Scott, I love that the last time we talked, we went in this direction. You're right. So I was a really curious kid, and I didn't particularly love any particular animal. I loved all animals. I was intrigued by animals, whether they were trying to catch bees in my front yard, which was probably a silly thing to try to do, or going to the National Zoo on the weekends. It was free, and my parents liked to take us there and let us see all the for me, animals that I hadn't seen because I hadn't traveled outside the United States at that point. But I was just really, really curious. And when you asked me in our former conversation about what book had a profound impact on me in birding, I realized it was a series of 3 books. They were the Tell Me Why series. I brought one in because I knew we were talking. I have to hold this up. These are ancient books, I think from the 70s. And you were so amazingly kind to see if you could find a set of 3. I didn't think they would be able to be discoverable anymore, but these are incredible books. I devoured them. They have these 1 or 2 page synopses of kind of all these curious questions you could ask, everything from how does can an earthworm smell, to what's the what are the different metals in this world? Who built the first wheel? I mean, just questions that were so intriguing to me. So I think that's why I became a scientist. I'm just really curious. I have lots of questions. Anyone who interacts with me knows I just ask a lot of questions. This was
Well, and
amazing.
I think that's spectacular. And I think the fact that you've carried that now into your 30s is just remarkable.
But you're so
Um,
kind. You're so kind.
so I have to throw out too, because the first animal you mentioned were bees.
Yeah.
And I just recently interviewed Scott Black, who heads up
Oh,
the Xerces Society. They're doing for invertebrates what you're doing for birds. And I did not know that honeybees are livestock, that they're not
oh,
natural bees to this country. They were brought over from Africa, and they are actually viewed as livestock, and so do not fall under a lot of the conservation laws
oh.
that other critters do. And I did not know that. And so every single time I do one of these podcasts, I am learning new things, and it's just a childlike wonder that all of the different things that are out there to learn. And some of the things you're going to share today are going to be new to me. I know that some of them will be new to the audience. But before we get there, before we talk about, because I love your term, shoot, bending the bird curve. I, I,
Yes.
I love that. So we're going to talk about that. But before we
Great.
do, since we touched on your childhood, we're now going to go to your young adulthood, and you're going to take us to Hawaii, where you discovered honey creepers and a husband, which not everybody has discovered those things.
Oh,
So
I
tell us
love
about
that.
that. These
That's
little finches, and I assume a full-size husband.
a full-size husband. I love that. No one's actually described it quite that way, my experience in Hawaii, so I'm gonna have to copy that. You are right. So I spent a few years living on the big island of Hawaii, and I was studying endangered Hawaiian honeycreepers. They are beautiful birds. You just mentioned the finches and other birds. They exist nowhere else in the world, and they are incredibly diversified and just amazing in terms of their behavior. And that was the first time I was working on an endangered bird species, really seeing the impacts up close of how they were threatened, kind of spending my entire life trying to help them recover. And my husband ended up being on the same project, working on the same Hawaiian honeycreeper project. So yes, I did. I discovered the impacts of climate by watching firsthand, and this was back in a time, Scott, where people weren't talking about climate change. You weren't hearing about it in the news. People weren't really aware of climate impacts, but because of the fact that these Hawaiian honeycreepers that we were studying lived on a volcano, Mauna Kea, there's high elevation, there's a lot of microclimates. And because of that, you could really see the impacts of climate right in front of your eyes at that point. And my eyes were open. My eyes were open to the impacts of climate and how that was affecting not only people, but endangered species and basically all living things. And it really changed my life. And then, of course, I did meet my husband, and that also changed my life. So both the honey creep, Hawaii was a major turning stone for me.
Well, I think that's spectacular. And there was a particular honey creeper
There was.
that you were fascinated with, and actually you had kind of a neat story about going out to find one, right?
Yeah, I did. I love this bird. This bird is so special to me. It's called the Akia polau, and there were very, very few on Mauna Kea at the time when I was living there. And I think the story I told you was that one of my best friends from graduate school, she was really into birds as well. And she came out to visit, and she really, really wanted to see an Akia polau. And I said, I cannot promise you that we're going to see this bird. And my husband, was working in the field on the honey creeper, said, I know where these birds are hanging out. I'm going to take us up there. And I just thought that was crazy to promise someone, everyone who's listening is a bird lover and a birder. And, you can't guarantee a bird's going to be any particular place at any particular time. But off we went in my truck, and we were partway up Mauna Kea, and we get a flat tire. And I thought, we're never going to get there. And so it was a few-hour drive. We get up to a location. We have to get out of the truck. We're scrambling over which is a type of lava, and sharp rocks, and it's scrubby. And in the distance is this lone snag of a tree. And darn it, if we weren't quietly standing there, and this male Akia polau comes, lands on the top of that snag, and starts singing his heart out. And it was so memorable for so many reasons. First, to see a bird and people need to see a picture of maybe on the podcast, you can show a picture of what
it's up on the screen as we talk. It's the same one that you gave me for the book.
Fantastic. So their bills are amazingly, they're so interesting. Never seen a bill like that on a bird, but it was a beautiful song. And it also was a heart-wrenching song, because I think at that point, there weren't very many females left on that side of Mauna Kea. And I think at this point, they're actually extirpated and gone from that site. But he's singing his heart out for a mate that probably couldn't hear him singing his heart out. And that was a beautiful moment, and also a little bit of a heartbreaking and wake-up call for me, in terms of wanting to really go into the field of conservation and not have a lot of other birds have that experience of singing for a mate that they may not be able to find.
One of the things that I've discovered in working with people like you and other people that are in conservation, regardless of what they're attempting to conserve, which I guess in the end is humanity in our world, but
That's right.
the specific areas that they're working on, is it is impossible to be in that world and not be touched by tragedy.
That's right.
I mean, if we didn't have issues and problems and tragedies, we wouldn't have need for conservationists. The world would just be rolling along. And so there is always a tinge of sadness, even with the victories. And it is one of the reasons that I so respect the work that you and others do, is that willingness. In a way, it's like people who are strong enough to work at an orphanage.
That's right.
It takes or a night nurse. It takes a particular amount of courage and strength and just an inner core to know that, you're going to get the updates on in your case, the loss of birds and where it's not working, and, how many did we lose to the lights and the cats and whatnot. And yet you keep fighting every day. And so for that, I applaud and thank. I'm very much appreciative. But let's talk about a positive one.
Yes.
Let's talk about bald eagles. You have bald eagles are tied into your youth from the DC area out to Seattle and then back to DC. You've got something to share there.
I do. This is the very different story. This is, to me, a story of hope and resilience. So I think I shared with you when we spoke, I had a childhood dream of seeing a bald eagle in the wild. I always wanted to see a bald eagle. I grew up outside of DC along the Potomac River in Virginia. And we'd go in, I said, the National Zoo and other places. You know, in the nation's capital, you see carved eagles on things everywhere. I really, really wanted to see a wild bald eagle. And I had to move west. I had to move to the West Coast to see my first bald eagle in the wild. And I just thought that was nuts. And I did see bald eagles in the wild along the Skagit River in Washington, and they took my breath away. There were a number of them in the winter that were there. But the best part of this story, I think, is that in 2013, I moved my family back to this area because I love this area. And I can drive into work now and I can see bald eagles flying over the Potomac River. I can walk my neighborhood. A few months ago, I was just walking down the street in my neighborhood. I had a bald eagle fly right overhead, and it was not very high up in the sky. It, it is a story of resilience. It is a story that we should be optimistic that we can really make a difference. If we have the courage, like you said, if we have the persistence, you know, in that case, we put a ban on DDT. Audubon was really involved in this well before I was involved with the organization. Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring and really raised awareness. But that's a story of optimism and resilience. I mean, birds
Mhm.
come back when you do the right thing. Birds come back when you restore a system, when you take chemicals out of their environment. So to me, that's an amazing story. And I love that story. And it's one of many stories of resilience and hope and optimism around birds
Well,
and what
I
they
think
can
it,
do.
I think it's a great one. And I have to share with you, I think I've shared with you in the past, but I'm working on a book called American Safari Zoos Without Fences. And the
Yes.
idea is there are about 30 places you can go in the country at an exact time and an exact location and be virtually guaranteed. To your point earlier, there are no guarantees, but be virtually guaranteed that you're going to see said animal. And I've broken the book up into 30 chapters, 10 marine mammals, 10 terrestrial mammals, and 10 birds of prey. One of the birds of prey is the bald eagle, and the location and the time I've picked is I am going to the Skagit Valley and the Skagit
Ah,
River in about 2 weeks.
great. Great.
And so the salmon are running, and that is, I struggled with that because I thought about the Conowinga Dam in Maryland on the Susquehanna River. And of course, the
Right.
Mississippi River Valley is a great place for bald eagles.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's going to be Skagit. And so when I made that decision and I made the plans to go there next month and I knew we were going to be talking, I thought, oh, this is kind of cool that
Yes.
it was significant for you. And I
Very
believe it's going to be
significant.
significant for me. And
Yes.
I'm very much looking forward to it. Okay, one more thing that we share, and then we roll into Audubon, which
Okay.
is one of the questions that I asked all my guests and why we love birds is, do you have a nemesis bird? And Elizabeth and I share a nemesis bird.
We do.
Tell the audience about it, because I think it's about the coolest bird out there for a bird I have not seen. But tell us about it.
Same. I feel the same way. So my nemesis bird, your nemesis bird, Scott, is the harpy eagle. And darn it, if I want to see that, I have to see that eagle. That's on my bucket list. It is a huge eagle. It is in Latin America. I have spent a lot of time down in Central and South America. I have never seen a harpy eagle. It's an apex predator. And we talked. We have to get down there together and
We're going.
find harpy eagle. I mean, we've been in places where we could have seen one. They're
We
hard
both
to
have,
see.
and we haven't yet.
We
I have
have
to tell you,
not.
Elizabeth, I just got back today from my editor in New York on the book, Why We Love Birds.
Yes.
I got back the edits, right? And you get the comments and the changes, and that's fine. And I'm going through and I get to the chapter about you. And as I'm going through, I see there's a comment. I think, well, what would that comment be? And it was in the part where I'd written about you where harpy eagles hunt sloths and monkeys.
Yes.
It makes for a pretty badass bird. And
Yes.
the editor wrote back and he goes, are you kidding me with this? Sloths and monkeys? So
Yeah.
we have a conversation tomorrow scheduled. I can't wait to tell him, no, that's what they hunt.
Yes,
That-
they do. They're unbelievably powerful apex predators. They're
yes.
incredible birds.
Yep. So you have raised the eyebrows of my editor. The only chapter
Love it.
where he wrote back with what was a hint of disbelief that, Scott, you do enjoy telling the story, but maybe we don't want to exaggerate that much.
Oh, I
And
love
it's like,
it.
nope, nope,
Not an
that's what you do.
exaggeration.
All right. Well, let us shift to the National Audubon Society, where you have
Great.
now moved your career and your passion. And
Yes.
I imagine maybe the best place to start is you talking a little bit about the mission and the vision and your role in trying to make that happen. What does the CEO of the National Audubon do to move the ball forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, our mission is to protect birds in the places they need today and tomorrow. It's a great mission. And part of the role of the CEO is to set the vision for the organization and to set the strategy for the organization. And then, of course, to make sure we can resource the work that we need to do. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that part. So, we back in 2023, when I came into Audubon in 2021, our strategic plan had lapsed. We didn't have a strategic plan. So we rolled up our sleeves and we started thinking about what we could do to make a difference. And I think I shared with you one of the most surprising things I learned. Perhaps a lot of people already knew this, but I didn't, that we've lost 3 billion birds in North America since I was born. And I found that so shocking and so motivating, frankly, to try to do something about it. And we know 2/3 of the birds that are left are threatened by climate impacts. They're magnifying other existing threats like habitat loss and fragmentation and things like this. So when you look at that curve of 3 billion birds lost, it just goes like this. It's just a downward curve. And so for our vision for Audubon that came out of this is to bend the bird curve. And what that means is to halt and ultimately reverse the decline of birds across the Americas. And that's so important because, and across the Americas is a really important part of that vision statement, because what we realize is you and I, we have birds we love to see in our backyard. A lot of those birds spend about half their lives in our back, in the areas where we live, but they spend the other half of their lives, let's say, really far up north in the Arctic or Canada, breeding. Many of them travel south to Central and South America for the winter. They have these little hotels and restaurants that they like to stop at along the way. And so this idea of bending the bird curve is our vision. And we came up with a strategic plan we call Flight Plan, because we're Audubon, and so we have to name our strategic plan.
I'm a 40-year marketing guy, so I'm all in for cute names.
I love it. It makes a big difference. I don't think you'd find a person at Audubon that didn't know what Flight Plan is. And that's our strategic plan. It guides what we do.
Well, I think that's great. Now, a couple of things you mentioned when we talked about the bald eagles for a moment, and the peregrines and ospreys benefited from that, from Rachel Carson.
Yeah.
The huge advantage we had there, I mean, obviously I wasn't a part of it, but the advantage that we had as humans is it was really a single issue problem.
That's right.
If we could ban DDT and take the couple of years to get it through the system without exterminating or extirpating the birds, then we knew we could recover, and we did. And it was great, and not to minimize it. But for your vision, number one, you've taken on all of the Americas, which I think will be news to some of the audience who might think of the National Audubon Society as the 48 states or maybe the 50 states, maybe Canada, but you go all the way down to the tip of Argentina.
We do.
But the losses we're facing, those 3 billion, the 1/3 of the birds that we've lost in your and I's lifetime,
Right.
that's complex. That's feral cats, that's cars, that's crashing into buildings, that's habitat loss, that's climate change. That's not, we go to Congress, we get DDT banned, we wait 3 years and the world is better.
Right.
Is that debilitating sometimes, that it just feels like you're fighting on it looks like you're fighting on 5 different fronts, and all of them are fighting back? You have climate change deniers and And I've never understood why skyscrapers have their lights on at night. It just seems like it would be expensive. Cars, I mean, all of these things. And I do not mean to be negative. I want to give you an opening to be positive. Can we win that battle? Can we stop the loss? And if we can stop it, can we start to I think we've gone from what, roughly 10 billion to 7 billion?
Are
Are
you
those,
talking birds worldwide?
I thought that was what we had in the Americas.
Yeah, I'm not. I
And I
don't know
could
the
be wrong,
exact numbers. I don't
but
know
we
the.
have lost quite a few birds. Can we get them back?
Well, I wouldn't be doing. I wouldn't. I wouldn't be leading Audubon if I didn't believe we could get them back. So
Okay.
maybe I'll say a couple things about this. I mean, the first thing is we have state of the birds reports, and they do show that different groups of birds are responding to actions that people are taking. Water birds, um, are some of the birds that we've seen increases in over time. I talked about the bald eagle. You and I talked about this. They can respond back. I think the really important thing, though, to know about Audubon is that we are a conservation organization that is powered through birds. So we say birds are our superpower. And we say that not just because birds are really important, they're beautiful, they're magical, but because they're sentinels and symbols of the planet's well being. So, yes, Scott, they can show us places where the planet is uh, under strain, but they also show us places where we're doing restoration work, where we're doing better management practices in forests or in grasslands, where systems are rebounding and the birds are coming back. And we have something called our bird friendly index that basically we use to monitor the health of a system and to monitor how effective our conservation actions are. And we see in places where, for example, we're working with ranchers in grasslands, or let's say we're working with loggers in forests, we can use this bird friendly index. And we see where we're working with land managers and they're using best practices, we have birds responding to that. And those areas have more birds in them than areas where those best practices aren't being used. So I see rays of hope in many, many spots of the world. Our water birds, our wetland birds. We've done a lot of wetland protection. People care a lot about fresh water. We need water to live, but so do birds. And all the things that we're doing to conserve and also to restore these habitats are making a big difference. But not just for birds, but because birds are symbol. They're the canary in the coal mine. They really are. And that's why people need to, I hope everyone listening understands birds are amazing and magical and important because in and of themselves, they're important, but they also are really important indicators of the health of the planet. And we all need the same things birds need. We need clean air. We need clean water. We need a healthy climate and we need a healthy food system. We just do. And birds are one of our best indicators of whether we have that.
Well, I think that's extraordinary. And one of the things when I started down this road, when you and I first met, it was focused on birds and birders. And when I started the podcast, frankly, it was focused on that because I don't mean this to be in any way assumptive or to take it for granted, but it was relatively easy to get birders to be on, with the exception of you with your schedule. Other people were relatively easy to get on the show, but it has since morphed into more full conservation
Yeah,
and all other kinds of animals, which is natural. I mean, it's a predictable path. But
sure.
one of the things that's happened, and birds come up a lot, is as I talked to you earlier today, I interviewed a woman whose expertise and life's work is beavers,
Oh, yeah.
and the impact that they have. And beavers are funny to me because beavers come up. I interviewed somebody earlier this week about invertebrates, and he said, well, we could save all the invertebrates if we just got the beavers out there doing their work. And I've interviewed a couple of rewilding people, the Y to Y group, Jody Hilke
Yes.
and the Rewilding Institute, Jack Humphrey, and they talk about the carnivore cascade, right? If we can
Right.
save the bears and the wolves and the
Yeah.
wolverines and stuff, the other animals kind of fall in line being
Right.
saved. And if we
That's
build a 2,000-mile corridor from Yellowstone to the Yukon,
yeah.
now we take birds and they've got full migration instead of just island hopping, right? Going from a park to
Definitely.
a park or a little bit of land to a little bit of land. but everybody mentions the beavers. It was like, well, we just, they'll build the wetlands and the birds will come and the elk will come and the grizzlies will come. And I'm embarrassed about this, but I've only recently come to understand the true interconnectedness of what we're trying to do.
That's right.
Last week, I interviewed a guy who's trying to put 1 billion oysters in New York Harbor.
Oh, yeah.
And it turns out that he's a birder. And one of the first things he talked about is 3 or 4 years into the project, the herons are back and there's ducks
That's right.
back in the harbor. He went straight to the birds, to your point, as an indicator.
Yeah. They are an indicator. They are a very strong indicator species. They just are. I love that. I know about that project.
We brought in oysters.
Yep.
Please go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say,
we brought in oysters.
Yeah, and then the birds come back. They really do.
And I love this. Yeah. I had somebody on recently to talk about pollinators, and he was talking about lemurs being one of the great pollinators. I never thought about that.
No,
and so as we work on trying to, stem the losses with birds, and then to your point, bend that curve back, bring the pendulum the other way, and start to bring those birds back, we can't do that without the grizzly bears and the honeybees and the lemurs and everybody else. And so I'm finding it magical, and the themes are so similar. What I want to ask you about next is some of your current programs at Audubon. We'll talk about future, but some of your current programs and your recent successes. And I'm going to ask you about a couple of the challenges or even failures where things haven't worked the way you hoped, because not all of this is perfect or it would be easy. Yeah. So tell us about these programs.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Flight Plan, what we set out to do.
Yes.
This is really where these are our 5-year milestones towards bending the bird curve. So the first one is habitat conservation. So we're committed to putting together a 300 million acre connected climate resilient corridor from the Arctic down through the Andes. And so this is across the Americas. And so we are looking to protect and conserve 300 million acres, both of core breeding and wintering habitat, but also stopover sites for birds, because a lot of them, as we talked about earlier, are migratory. So these hotels and restaurants that they need to stop on. So we're really building this connected corridor that can move and change with climate as a climate.
Well, thank goodness you picked a conservative goal, a nice, easily achievable number like 300 million acres.
Well, one thing you should know about me is I'm always pushing to be really ambitious, because I think you'll accomplish more when you set really big goals. But yes,
I would imagine. Is this part of the 30 by 30 program?
It is. It contributes to 30 by 30, protecting 30% of lands and waters by 2030. Yeah, it does. It's directly related to that global goal.
It's a huge chunk of it, 300 million.
Yes, it is. It's a huge chunk of it, because we know climate change is important. We also have goals around capturing carbon in natural systems, mangroves, grasslands, forests, so wetlands, things like that. So we're using what we call natural climate solutions, how you sequester and store carbon in natural systems. We are actually working with renewable energy and clean energy companies to try to accelerate renewable and clean energy across the landscape to help bring down greenhouse gas emissions. We have a big policy agenda, and that's because we are nonpartisan, and we know that having enduring policy, especially when it's bipartisan, has bipartisan support. It keeps our results durable and lasting over time. And then we have a big goal around community building. One of the things people may not realize is Audubon has a real multi-generational movement of supporters. We have kids who are going to K-8 education at some of our conservation action centers. We have 100 college campuses. We had our 100th this year, which I'm so excited about.
Congratulations.
Yeah, these are Audubon chapters that are formed by students for students on college, universities, and college campuses. And then we have, people who work for Audubon, who support Audubon financially, who support the work we do legislatively. So you have people who are part of the Audubon community who are from 6 to, I'd say, 96. Truly, it's fantastic. But between habitat conservation, climate change, policy, and community building, those are our key pillars. And we're making great progress, truly. We really are.
Well, I think that's great. And I want to touch on that college thing. First of all, congrats on the 100th college.
Thank
But
you.
again, having interviewed the 52 birders, one of the things that I discovered is how many of them gave up birding when they were in college, or set it aside and brought it back
That's right.
afterwards, because there wasn't an active community, and they were, obviously you're doing other things from 19 to 23. But that being the case, that's great that now there's a place when, especially because, so many high school kids are kind of hesitant about being known as a birder, and, the whole geek thing. And
Yeah.
now to have a welcoming club or organization to bring it, and forgive me. And it's one of the things, actually, some of these changes that you guys are bringing about in that area. Elizabeth, I've got 2 panel podcasts scheduled for January.
Oh,
One is
fantastic.
with 3 women birders, all of whom have been birding for over 50 years, and to
Wow.
talk about the changes in birding in that world, and all of whom Cy Montgomery and Lynn Scarlett and Debbie Shearwater. And they're going to
Fantastic.
talk about how different Debbie Shearwater tells stories when she wasn't welcome in Audubon clubs in Texas because she was a woman,
Whoa, wow.
and
That's
how that,
really so different now.
yes, and that's important to talk about. And then the other one is also people, it's Drew Lanham, Chris Cooper, and Scott Edwards, talking
Yes,
about how things have changed for the Black community in
that's right.
birding over the years,
That's
and
right.
including, obviously, Audubon clubs and bird
Yes,
societies, and how they're welcome now and they weren't before, and all those things. So
yeah,
to hear you talk about the programs you're doing, to know I've got these 2 separate podcasts to talk about
that's right.
some of the changes and how they've grown and changed and benefited, I'm excited about it. That whole
Really,
world is opening up.
it is.
And it's so great that you're doing it,
Yeah,
and it's actually a question for later, although of course we're chewing up the time already. But what is the goal of the Audubon clubs around the country? I mean, I speak to probably 2 a week, but
yeah.
tell the audience what those organizations are there for. If
No,
I'm
it's
a birder and I'm not involved, or I'm not a birder and I'm thinking to get involved, or how about if I'm not a birder, is there still a place for me in the
yes.
Audubon Club?
Oh, you
So
bet. So,
tell us.
yeah, let me tell you a little bit. But so w- anyone is welcome into the National Audubon Society community, truly. We have so many great opportunities for people to become involved. So we have National Audubon Society. We have a number of Audubon chapters around the country. We have our conservation action centers, which you can go into. They're brick and mortar spots where you can go learn about birds. You can learn about conservation. You can meet people who are doing the work. And then we have sanctuaries, which are places like our Corkscrew Sanctuary in Florida, where you can go out on a boardwalk and you can learn about birds and go into interactive kind of indoors, and then go outside and learn what's there in that habitat. So there's
And,
lots of,
and I have to stop you. I've been to Corkscrew a dozen times.
it's amazing, isn't it?
If you've not been and you have the chance, go. I'm going down to Florida next week to work on a chapter on manatees.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
I'm down in Crystal Springs. And so I'm
Yep.
hoping to sneak over to Corkscrew. I love Corkscrew.
It's a
Sorry to
fabulous.
interrupt, but it's just, I had to put a pitch in for you there.
Yeah, well, thank you, Scott. I mean, that's fantastic. We have those types of centers and sanctuaries all over the country. I'm going to encourage people to go to audubon.org. Truly, there's so much people can do, but I want to make a plug for something, because this is something everybody can participate in. Every year, we have our Christmas bird count. This year it goes from mid-December to early January. We had 125th anniversary, but this is a community science project. This is anyone who wants to help us count birds. We've been doing this for over a century. You can do this. You do not have to be an ornithologist. You do not have to be a birder. You can go out with a group of people, go to the audubon.org website. We also have something called the Great Backyard Bird Count. That's from February 13th to 16th of 2026. This is when people go out in their backyard, and we had almost 1 million people participate. These are just everyday people that just go out with friends or by themselves, and you just record the birds that you're seeing and you're hearing. And you don't have to be an expert. We have all, you know this, Scott, you have all these helpful aids now. You can have apps on your phone where you can hear a bird and you can press a button and it'll identify what the bird is, or you can look up on your phone. You can use a traditional bird guide. It's really fun. So we really rely on everyday people that we call community scientists. But you don't have to be a scientist. This is just, regular everyday people going out and helping us collect data. These data for the Christmas bird count, that's over a century of data, and we can look at trends on bird populations, how climate's impacting. We produced a study recently, a couple years ago, that showed the impacts of climate change on eastern populations of birds. I mean, there are not a lot of organizations that have over a century of data. And it's because people like you, like your neighbors, like your family, have helped us collect these data. It's
I
impressive.
think and this all falls under the umbrella of citizen science, right?
That's right. We call it
Which,
community science. It's the same thing. That's right.
yeah,
Exactly.
which is just spectacular. And I would certainly mark that down as a success.
Yes.
I asked you to highlight some of your successes, and anything where you get 1 million people involved in a couple of weeks, at any level. To your point, look out the back window.
That's
What do you
right.
see? What's out there?
Exactly.
And report that in, and that information is tremendously valuable,
Yes.
for everybody, for
For every.
scientists, but for communities.
That's right.
And I just think that is, oh my goodness, it's so important to get out there and
Yeah.
do that. So what other programs do you want to share? What else would you like to highlight? Either current programs or hoped for programs or planned programs for the future?
I love it. So I'm very proud of our community science efforts and our science efforts in general. I would encourage everybody to go to our website and look up the Migratory Bird Explorer. Or the Bird Migration Explorer. You can go on site as a publicly available platform with some of these data. You can see what birds are in your backyard and what month of the year. You can track where these birds go. These birds, Scott, are so incredible. The black-poll warbler, it weighs as much as this pen. It travels 3,000 miles north to south, and it stops over, and these birds are traversing different states, different countries, different continents. It's unbelievable, but you can see their journeys based on live time tracking data on our Bird Migration Explorer, which is amazing. So I want to tout our science. I'm really proud of our science. And so that's one thing I'd like to tout. I love that we're multi-generational, that we are building very intentionally an inclusive movement for people of color, for women, for people who have disabilities. It does not matter. Everybody is welcome at Audubon, and we try to accommodate everyone to get them passionate about conservation and our natural world, using birds as our superpower, frankly, to unite people. And I'm just proud of our conservation agenda. We are about 100 million acres, almost 100 million acres conserved of that 300 million acre corridor. That's tremendous in a couple of years. I feel like we're on fire here. We've put in place over 100 new protected areas in Latin America alone. It's extraordinary.
So was that a big decision? You know what? First of all, and forgive me, I'm 99% sure I'm right, that it's Peter Pyle, who is the author of the Pyle Guides.
Pyle Guides.
But Peter believes that he has the longest consecutive Christmas bird count streak of anyone in the country.
Love
68 years, as long as he's been alive. So
Yeah.
his first winter alive, his parents took him out as like a 6-month-old to the Christmas bird count, and he's not
Amazing.
missed one since. I'm 99% sure it's Peter, and if it's not, everybody forgive me, including Peter, but I'm pretty dang certain. But the decision to go from what was basically an American-based, a United States-based organization, and I understand the motivation. We get the birds half the time, and then some of the birds are heading north half the time, and some of the birds are heading south half the time. Obviously, a few of them don't migrate at all. But was that a difficult decision for the organization? I mean, you're taking on a lot of complexity and additional cost and all of those things. How did that come about?
No, it's uh, a wonderful story because it involves a lot of change management, and oftentimes change can involve a lot of adjustment and can be really challenging for folks. In this case, I was frankly amazed how easy it was to have that become a core part of Audubon. There was little to no resistance. The chain of logic makes total sense. People care deeply about our mission to protect birds in the places they need. And understanding when you can see the data, watching real birds move across the Western Hemisphere, it just makes total sense to people. They care about the birds in their backyard. They care about birds in other people's backyard, but they want those same birds to come back to their backyard the next spring or fall. And so it was amazing to me to undergo such a huge change initiative in an organization as large and complex as Audubon and have so many people embrace it right from the start just because it makes sense. And I would say it was a mission critical decision. I'm really proud of the growth of the organization. Since 2021, we've gone from 5 countries to 11 countries. And so we are active in 11 countries. And I'll tell you what, Scott, one of the recipes for success here is that, and I will often be heard to say, Audubon doesn't do anything alone. Everything we do is in partnership with others. We partner with a lot of other conservation organizations. We partner with local communities, with indigenous communities, both in the United States and in Canada, also in Latin America. So local communities, indigenous communities, other conservation organizations, sometimes even for the renewable energy work, industry, we partner. I think partnership is a huge reason that Audubon has been successful for 120 years is because we don't try to go it alone. Our mission's too big. It's too complex, like you said. And so the secret sauce is finding the right partners to work with and to collaborate with and being open to that and not always feeling you have to have the right answer, but being open to other ways of thinking, other types of knowledge, other ways of doing things. Because what you care about ultimately is saving our precious planet and saving people and saving birds. And they're all interrelated, like you said. They're all interrelated.
Well, in today's political climate, the ability and willingness to do that is spectacular, and it speaks to you and all of the groups that you work with.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. Where is Audubon in a decade? Maybe even before you answer that, help the audience understand, clarify for them the challenges that the birds are facing, and then where do you hope to be? You had mentioned earlier you do a 5-year plan. By the way, I spent 40 years writing strategic plans. I wish I'd known you in 2021. But I would never go beyond 5 years, and I
Yeah.
would try to restrict it to 3 because
That's great.
if anyone thinks they can predict the world 10 years out, they're fooling somebody.
Agree.
But tell us what challenges the birds are facing, and then tell us where we're going to be in 2035.
Yeah, well, they are facing a lot of challenges. Habitat fragmentation and destruction is one. That's why we have our habitat conservation goals. Certainly pollution, a shifting climate. Why is a shifting climate important? Flowers are blooming at different times. Insects are available at different times. These are food sources for the birds. They're places where birds want to stop and refuel. They need the food to be there. They need when they need to stop or when they want to breed and hunker down for a while. They need the habitat to be able to do that. So I would say there are a lot of challenges for birds. Certainly, you mentioned a few, like even light sources. Or we have lights out programs to try to encourage cities to turn off lights during mass migrations. All of these are challenges. But I'm gonna take a slight detour here and say at Audubon, one of our big challenges is that we are nonpartisan, and we really want to bring people together to come to conservations, to come to solutions that are dealing with our challenges that I just mentioned. And in a time like now where it's really just divisive, and people have lots of ways to figure out what they don't agree with, I would say that's one of our biggest challenges at Audubon, that we continue to use birds as our superpower to try to unite people. So where are we going to be in 10 years? First of all, I hope we've begun to bend the bird curve. Without a doubt, that has to be true. I would say there's something we haven't touched on, and I'll just touch on it very quickly, but I think we're going to see a lot of advances in technology and AI that are going to transform how people collect data, how they monitor bird populations and where birds are going, how we identify birds and things like that. I just think I have a bird buddy out in my front yard. I can use a video camera to see what's coming to visit it. I had someone just a week ago show me a black bear cub that came to their bird buddy. So it's not just birds that these things attract, that you can use it to see other kinds of wildlife. But the point is, I run into so many people who show me videos or pictures of what's come to their feeder because they have video cameras and things. I think we can't actually imagine what the world will be like in 10 years. I would like to believe that because of the efforts of Audubon and other conservation organizations, that we see places rebounding, that are cleaner, that are healthier, where birds are coming back. And, I realized, Scott, I forgot to tell you a really important piece of the eagle story, which is
Okay.
when I was a kid.
Will I have to rewrite the chapter?
No, I don't think so.
Because it's already been
I was
approved.
when I was a kid, if you fell into the Potomac River, you were rushed to the hospital and had to get a tetanus shot. I mean, that's why the return of the eagle to the Potomac is so incredible. Now people are kayaking, they are swimming out there. Yes, it could be even cleaner. That we've gone from something where literally it caused parents, to rush their kid to the hospital and get a tetanus shot, to somewhere that you can find people paddling and paddle boarding and kayaking and things. So I'm going to go back to it. Like I believe in 10 years we will do the right thing. This generation, our generation, we will be remembered by what we do with this precious world that we inhabit. And I believe that is our call to action, is to take this really seriously, to do everything we can to protect our precious planet and to restore the places that we've degraded, and to bring back birds and pollinators and all the amazing animals that will follow, and to make the world better for ourselves at the same time.
Well, I think that's an awesome story. Pete Malinowski, who runs the Billion Oyster Project in New York, it's funny you mentioned that, because he talks about the East River and how parents, you couldn't touch it and whatnot. And you bring up the exact same things. He brought up kayakers and birds. You brought up ducks and egrets. You brought up, eagles and kayaks. But apparently kayaks are actually the canary in the cave. I'm beginning to think it's beavers and kayaks are the solution for the future. And I have to tell you, one of the things I've been talking about a lot in these programs, and I love your optimism, is we've been so overwhelmed with we're all going to die.
Yeah.
The polar caps are melting and we're going to boil and we're going to flood and it's this and it's that. And after a while, I think people give up. And having been a lifelong marketer, I tend toward the positive. And so I'm looking for these success stories. I'm looking for somebody kayaking the Potomac with a bald eagle flying over their damn head.
Yeah. You can find it
come
now.
on. We can win these battles.
We can.
But we're hearing from too many people too often that we can't.
That's
that
right.
It's over, that it's done, that it's the tipping point, we're back. But we're not.
Yeah.
we are certainly stupid in a number of areas, but we are also brilliant and resilient. And if
Yeah.
we focus on that, and if we have people like you leading the charge, and again, whether it's for birds or bees or beavers or grizzlies, all of those things in concert are moving the ball forward. Every
Yeah.
time you save a bird, something else is healthier.
That's right.
It's either eating something or being eaten by something, or, pushing habitat or whatever it is. And so for me, I am grateful for the work that you and all of the people at the Audubon Club are doing. Whether it's down to the local volunteer at the, suburb of Minneapolis, giving a tour on
Yes.
Saturdays to senior citizens,
You bet.
to leading, to your point, world changes and trying to gather up 300 million acres. By the way, we had a pine forest down the street from us, and they were harvesting it. And my wife went down and convinced them to sell her 1 acre on the corner of that
Fantastic.
pine forest to save it. So now you only have 299,999,999 to go, because we've set aside the one.
Thank you.
And
Well,
it's fun. There's owls out there, and there's white-tailed deer all in our little acre,
that's
and we
right.
feel like that's our little piece of
Mhm.
that world, and
Yeah.
it is fulfilling.
Yes.
It is fulfilling. Okay, I promised Meg and Victoria that I would wrap this up, or they said I was never allowed to speak to you again on any project ever for any reason. So I am going to do that, but very reluctantly. And I will point out to you that I had Scott Weidensaw on for 3+ hours.
Wow.
But
That's
he and I are both
amazing.
babblers, so there you go. We probably each thought the other one spoke for 2 hours and 50 minutes. But if you're listening to this on one of the podcast platforms, my email is scott@naturallyscott.com. If you've got questions or follow-up or comments for Elizabeth, get them to me, and I'll get them to Elizabeth or answer them myself if I can. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll throw the email up as a visual, and you can see that. I love to hear back from people. I know Elizabeth loves
Yes.
feedback as well. And now, as I do at the end of every podcast, Elizabeth, if you could please highlight a book, and I know you're going to say there are so many, I can't really pick one. And yet I'm just kind of a son of a bitch as a host. So I'm going to ask you to just pick one.
I got picked one for you, Scott.
Thank
I've
you.
got one for you. And I really do want to say, I encourage people to go to audubon.org. Please go to audubon.org. Think about becoming a supporter or contributor. But here's my book for you. It links to what we were talking about earlier, The Backyard Bird Chronicles by Amy Tan.
Amy Tan.
It's a great book. It's a great pre-read before you participate in our great backyard bird count in February, if for anyone who's listening. But really, truly, please go to audubon.org. Find a center or sanctuary near you, a chapter. Think about contributing, thinking about signing up to some of the legislation we're pushing. Just become active. There's so many, be a community scientist. There's so many ways people can engage with Audubon. And Scott, with you. And I just can't thank you enough for doing these podcasts and raising awareness and bringing fun and joy into people's lives through our conversations.
You are such a sweetheart. Thank you so much. And as far as being active, 2 requests. Number 1, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Every time you do, YouTube pushes this out to more people, and more people can hear Elizabeth and the other guests' messages, and I can bring on more guests. You'll notice there's no commercials. There's no interruptions. This is on my nickel. I just want people to learn and listen and get excited about this. And the other thing is, and I know Elizabeth agrees with this, whatever it takes, get outside. If that's your back porch, your backyard, a local park, a national wildlife refuge, an Audubon Center, Corkscrew, for example, is a great one. But get outside, because if you do, you will feel that sense of renewal and a newfound confidence and belief that we really can make a difference. Elizabeth, I spent last week up in Potomac Lakes National Wildlife Refuge and Alligator River. I was working on 3 chapters for the new book: tundra swans, colonial Spanish mustangs, and black bears.
Okay.
And I took a dear friend of mine we've been friends for over 50 years, and he went with me for the week. And we were talking a couple days ago over a cigar, and he said, you know what? It refilled my soul. It just getting out there, it's transformational is the word he used.
It is.
And it is fantastic. And the one thing I ask is if you do go outdoors at any level, in any place, anytime, stay safe and stay curious. Elizabeth, thank you so much. Tell Meg and Victoria I hit my deadline, and I will let you know when this is going to run. As always, it has been a treat to talk to you.
Thank you, Scott. Always a pleasure. I always enjoy our conversations. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.